An offer is not an incentive or a promotion. That's not what I'm talking about. An offer is the thing that you're offering. It just sounds nicer to call it an offer than, the thing that you're offering. Every email you write and page you write must have one offer and only one. That offer is what your efforts on the page are driving toward. It needs to be right for the stage of awareness the prospect is in by the time they reach that offer. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have two versions of one offer. For example, your offer may be to subscribe to a membership. That's your one offer, but you might offer a monthly option and an annual option. You just can't offer a monthly option, an annual option, and a free ebook option. Now, here's where I start with offers. If the visitor is unaware, pain aware, or solution aware, make the offer something they opt in to get. But this does not include a free trial of your solution. If the visitor is product aware, make your one offer a free trial of your solution, or ask for the sale if you're in e-commerce. Now, if the visitor is most aware, make the offer the paid version of your product. Importantly, there's no backup offer. There's no text link under the button giving, a scared, little timid second offer. You're not in copy school to take the easier, safe way, right? This is to make your copy perform better. So please don't go through the effort of determining the prospect stage of awareness, of crafting messaging for them based on what you've learned by listening to them, of developing a big idea, crafting a compelling promise, only to cop out on the offer. Now, because the offer is such a big deal, I like to start with the one reader with their AI and then think about the best one offer to give them by the end of the page. Then I craft the big idea and the promise out of that. So I don't leave the offer to the end. And you shouldn't think of it at the end after thinking of everything else either. If you follow the rule of one, your copy will be good. It just will, right? Here's what the rule of one means. You're always writing for one. One reader, one big idea, one promise or outcome, and one offer. Not two readers, not two ideas, not two promises or two outcomes, and not two offers. One, and only one. As soon as you try to communicate two big ideas or communicate one big idea to two readers, you dilute the strength of your message. As soon as you try to convince the reader to take you up on more than one offer, you dilute the strength of that one offer. So write the page with one reader in mind. This makes it very hard to write a homepage, but it makes it very easy to write targeted landing pages. And it makes the solutions like, lead pages, Unbounce, and Kickoff Labs really great because you can easily duplicate and modify landing pages with them. So there's no reason not to make multiple landing pages instead of driving a bunch of diverse traffic to a single catch-all or catch-nothing page. Write the page with the one big idea in mind. What one happiness-inducing thing will your prospect get out of taking you up on your offer? It's not saving time and money. It's either saving time or saving money. You can't write a page that tries to convince the prospect of both. You need to go hard on convincing the prospect of one. And naturally, of course, then you need to know which of those two matters most to them. And this is why we research and it's why we target. So write the page then with one promise or outcome in mind. This is a measurable thing against which they can score you. If you go with the save time big idea, what measurable outcome can you promise or claim? If you can't promise or claim anything, your page will be weaker. As soon as you promise something, your page strengthens considerably. The better the promise, the stronger the copy. And of course, write the page with one offer in mind throughout, only one. So one reader, one big idea, one promise or outcome, and one offer on one page or in one email. That is the rule of one. Sometimes we're offering a product or service that's, all about delight, like the game Tetris. It's not solving a pain. It's something that gives us pleasure for pleasure's sake. But far more often we've built and we're selling solutions that solve pains or problems. You've probably asked yourself if your product is a painkiller, a vitamin, or an addictive narcotic. Which of the three? If you don't know what your product is, pause the video and give it some thought. What pain do you neutralize? How are you like Tylenol, really, or Advil? If you're not Tylenol, are you a vitamin of some kind? How do you take people from, way down here and move them up to a new level of health, happiness, overall satisfaction with life? And if you're neither a painkiller nor a vitamin, do you create enhanced life experiences for people? Are you like coffee? Are you like a game of paintball? Once people have experienced your solution just once, do they feel an intense desire to keep coming back to it? Now, again, most of us are selling painkillers. We're positioning our products as the way to eliminate X pain. To do that takes knowing our customer pains, of course, which is why we survey and do all those other things like forum mining and review mining, which I cover, of course, in book 1, where stellar messages come from. Once we know their specific and unique pains, we as copywriters simply push those back at them. That is, we write those pains in so many words on the page, in a bullet list, a headline, in any number of places, depending on the severity of the pains they're experiencing and you're solving. We take the very things they tell us and we make them into copy to neutralize those pains. So if you're selling an ebook on using WordPress, and a lot of prospects told you that a big pain associated with using WordPress is installing a theme, you might then write copy like this. You will see step by step how to install any theme on WordPress, even if you're not a developer, even if you've never written a line of code. That's your copy. Then, of course, your ebook has to teach them that. Customer surveys are also really good for product development. So that's a good little side note. Sometimes we speak explicitly to our visitors' pains. Other times we're far more subtle. When I was writing App Design Vault's homepage, I knew that one of the key pains that people had and what made them want to consider investing in an app design template in the first place was this. They wanted to stand out in the App Store. I found this out by surveying customers and visitors, surprise, surprise. I also learned that they were tired of getting overlooked. So that's a pain. And they were tired of pouring their souls into creating this really great app and then having nobody want to buy it or install it because it looked bad and got bad reviews for it. That's a pain. They were tired of getting ho-hum reviews because although their app's functionality was solid, it kind of looked hacked together. That was a pain. They were also frustrated by the need to design apps from scratch. They had some Photoshop skills, but not enough to really, knock it out of the park. All of those are pains. Each one of those is a pain that could belong on the page. And all of those belong in some incarnation, of course, on the page. The homepage headline for App Design Vault currently directly addresses a pain like so. Never design your apps from scratch again. That's the headline. That is a pain. Effective copy very often, if not always, touches a sore spot. It kind of pokes at a wound. It finds the rawest parts of the prospect and it makes them feel those pains just long enough that they start to want a salve or a band-aid or a cure. Surveying your customers and visitors to your site will definitely generate a massive list of pains and problems you can or already do solve. Your job as a copywriter then becomes to rank and order them on the page. Now, depending on whom you're writing for and what they already feel, what they already know, and what they want, you will list different pains and how you solve them. The result is an understanding of what you need to say to your prospects. And if you have enough written responses from your surveys, you'll also find exactly how to say it. Domino's, the pizza chain, made waves in the 80s when they made this promise to customers. 30 minutes or it's free. Promises are powerful, but why? I mean, to understand the importance of a promise, we need to step back and think about why promises are important. Now, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review that summed up nicely what we all already kind of get. I mean, we all know it, but take someone saying it and publishing it in something like the Harvard Business Review for us to say, okay, we're all allowed to say that. It's been validated, blah, 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 blah. So they said this is the thing. If you're running a business, you contend with the rampant assumption that your main goal in life is to part fools from their money. That is a major source of friction for buyers, fear of feeling like a fool. Now, my sister Sarah is a prime example of this at play. When I told her that my best friend Angela had paid a sleep consultant $200 for an hour of online coaching in order to help her baby sleep better, Sarah could not believe her ears. It didn't matter that Angela raved about this sleep consultant. It didn't matter that the sleep consultant actually helped Angela get her little boy to sleep through the night, which in turn, of course, transformed her quality of life and made her feel more connected to her son. Sarah just shook her head and said, I can't believe someone would charge for that. Now, people believe businesses are trying to separate fools from their money. It's a belief. Nobody wants to spend their money on something that isn't going to work. So if you can make a promise to people, you actually put some skin in the game. There's a sense of a consequence, and that's what's so powerful. Now, a promise is something that people can actually put you to task on. You could order a pizza from Domino's and wait at the door with your stopwatch in hand. You could do that. You could tell if they'd kept their promise or not. But what was the promise, really? It was just a repositioning of Domino's money-back guarantee with a little extra oomph. And this is the oomph. They'd also give you your money back if you were unsatisfied, of course. You'd get to keep the pizza. Of course you would. And they could say, I'm sure, based on data, that 9 times out of 10, they actually delivered pizzas within 30 minutes of taking an order. So they could turn their existing service and their existing guarantee into a promise and risk very little while getting major payoff. I mean, people love the promise. So is there something you could promise in your copy? I mean, Angela's sleep consultant could say, I promise that after 1 hour of coaching, your baby will sleep through the night or your money back. That's a good promise. She could stand confidently behind that promise too, because it's the truth. And to reduce her risk, she could get a bunch of testimonials from people saying they got the promised result, which could, of course, make customers feel like, social deviants if they ended up buying and then they said the opposite. A little bit of persuasion there. But what about you? What is an outcome of using your product? And could you increase conversions by matching that outcome, that measurable outcome, with your satisfaction guarantee or your money back guarantee, then massaging it a bit until you've actually got a really desirable promise on your hands? Or think of it a little differently. What would happen to your business tomorrow if you woke up to find that your competitors had started making a really, really desirable promise? You should watch this video before you write any page. Watch it each time you want to write. It covers the key points to keep in mind when you're writing copy. Here they are. Are you ready for them? Number 1, copywriting is your online salesperson. It has to be a very good salesperson. Now, the best salespeople don't make you feel like you're being pitched, and they do end up closing the sale. So your copy needs to do the same. And of course, you're not always selling, so it has to know when not to sell too. Number 2, you're selling prospects a better version of themselves, not a piece of software, not a photography class, not a house, not a hotel room near the beach, not another app, none of those things. You're selling them a better, happier version of themselves. 3, always join the conversation that's already happening in their heads. The conversation in your head isn't the point. The conversation in their head is. 4, it's all about them. Even when you're talking about you, it should feel like you're talking about your prospects. 5, yes, people do read. They just don't read anything that feels boring or like work. 6, if you're not clear and specific, people will not understand your message. 7, if you don't know your message yet, you don't know what the people you're talking to care about or want from you, and you don't know where they are in the sales cycle, then don't write. There, those are it. Now restart this video and watch it all from the beginning again. By now, I hope you're starting to see the possibilities of writing better copy when you can answer these 2 questions. What stage of awareness is my prospect arriving here in, and how can I move them to the next stage? That said, it doesn't stop at how aware your visitor is. Within each stage is another question we've got to answer. How strong are their feelings on the subject? That is, how intent are they on taking action? We're looking at awareness and intent, or at our visitor's AI. Now, you may ask, what does intent matter? Well, consider pain-aware people. Consider the difference between someone suffering from a mild ache in their shoulder to a piercing, crippling migraine. The person with the mild ache has low intent to take action on solving the pain. They can wait until they're done work, or they can start, solving the problem immediately just by rolling their shoulder. But the person with the migraine has high intent to solve that problem. They can't continue on with work. They need to find and acquire a solution immediately. So factors that influence intent or willingness to take action are the severity of the pain your prospect feels, belief in the solvability of that pain, access to solutions. If their solution to their pain is water and they're in the desert, intent to take action on finding and drinking water would be really strong. Continuing on, understanding of the solutions available, prices of the solutions available, other parts of my life that need to change to acquire the solution, and the number of people depending on me to solve the problem, or just basic timing. So to be clear, you want to know the AI for your one reader. That means before you write any page, email, or ad, you need to find where your prospect is on the AI spectrum. To do that, you need to identify the factors that are driving your prospect in X stage of awareness to engage with your content. You can do this very easily with an on-page poll like you find with Hotjar. Here's how. So you'd activate an exit intent poll that fires only when the visitor shows intent to leave the page, and ask them, before you go, could you tell us why you chose not to buy today? Pretty easy question. Let's say you asked this question for people in a product-aware stage, such as visitors to a product detail page on an e-commerce site. Perhaps it's a page selling an expensive handbag. If the majority of visitors respond to the poll with, oh, just browsing, or, worse, something like no, you could say that the AI of the prospects to this page is, ambivalent product-aware. If the majority of respondents tell you they want to see the new collection, or they're not sure they need another handbag, they might be low intent product aware. If they say they're comparing this handbag to a different one or going to research reviews, we might write the page for a moderate intent product aware prospect. And if the majority of them say they're leaving the page because they're looking for shipping rates, we'd call them high intent product aware. So use the AI spectrum to arrive at an understanding of where the prospect is, and to fill in the core components of your messaging in the chosen cell. So by this point, I hope you're starting to see that all of the pieces of Copy School, from awareness identification to surveying, work together, and that you don't have to guess and throw stuff at the page. If you give yourself a little more time to plan your messages on a page, you won't need as much time to write, and you won't have to sit with the frustration or the problem of having no clue what to say on your page or in your email. Major forces are working very, very hard to keep conversions from happening on your website. Now, copy can help you overcome most, as can smarter user experiences and a little bit of trickery. 5 key anti-conversion forces are management, inertia, introversion, all the other wants a person has, and multiple buying decisions. Let's work through these. The first barrier to conversion is C-levels and management. at your place of work. If you have other people review your copy, especially C-levels, then those people are more likely than not going to actually be barriers to conversion. They mean well, but they're a force that's working against you. They generally think B2B stands for boring to boring. I mean, I once asked over 100 copywriters why they weren't writing the copy they wanted to, and nearly half said this: it's because corporate didn't approve of voice, tone, or personality. So how do you overcome this force? Well, you test. And sometimes you sneak copy out without the review. I mean, that's frankly what I do. Legend has it that the Amazon one-click button was a test that a developer pushed out without anyone's approval because, as an idea, management had rejected it. Now, the test proved the power of the one-click button, and they've since patented it. Now, inertia. Every copywriter knows that one of the biggest forces acting against us is the fact that an object at rest stays at rest. If I'm sitting at my desk browsing for new accounting software because, mine's pretty painful, I may come across a relatively good-looking alternative. I read the homepage, I consider clicking start now, but then I just go on living my life instead. How do you overcome inertia? A clear, obvious way is this. You make it impossible for the prospect not to act today. Scarcity, urgency, those are big for overcoming this force. Retargeting ads and follow-up emails go a long way too. But it can't just be overcome with one tactic. You need to get inside your prospects' heads and start moving them out of their course in the direction that you need them to go, a direction that breaks them out of the endless sameness of inertia. The next force is introversion. We'd simply rather not have to say no to someone's face, which is why, unless you're, ready to buy or short on time, you tend not to let the salesperson at the store help you because it's going to be really hard to say no to them. Even our best prospects are allowed, thanks to the web, to be total introverts. They say no to the idea of speaking to your sales rep. They don't want to enter their phone number to get a free ebook. And they'd be wise to talk to you, but they don't want to. To overcome this introversion, on-site chat definitely goes a long way, as does tweaking your sales funnel so that prospects commit in a small way before being invited to speak to a sales consultant. The next force, they want to spend their money on other things. To overcome this, you need to lead with the want wherever possible. Now, the want is not a need, it is a want. We sell wants. Even toilet paper, which is a need, gets sold as a want. You don't want scratchy toilet paper, you want Charmin. So match your prospects' needs, but highlight and amplify their wants, not just benefits, but wants. So now, when I watch TV, it's usually HGTV, which home reno shows. And if you've ever seen a home reno show like Love It or List It, you've seen homeowners hand over a $60,000 budget, have all these wish list items, and then totally freak out when half their budget gets spent on fixing knob and tube wiring or reinsulating the basement or replacing the water heater. They freak out because no one can see those things. Yes, they're spending money on a real need, but that need does not match their want. Perhaps actually a really good idea would be for the next product that, Nest redesigns to be a water heater, because then you'd want to show your friends about it and you wouldn't feel so bad about having spent money on this need instead of a want. The point is that people want to spend their hard-earned and sometimes just found money on things they want. For example, Lance, my partner, has a Lamborghini he desperately wants. I mean, you could buy a bachelor apartment for the cost of a Lamborghini and then rent it out and generate income perhaps forever. But he's not getting, but he wants the Lamborghini. You are selling something people need, of course, if you're selling B2B, but they don't want the need, they want the want. You have to find the want. That doesn't mean that you totally disregard their needs, of course. Man cannot live on benefits, outcomes, and fantasies alone. Your prospects, as they grow in awareness, will increasingly need to get the facts from your copy. This is especially true with enterprise solutions or anything you're selling. That's a big ticket item. But it's also true for that $9 a month SaaS app. When your prospect is worked up and ready to buy, they can be nudged that much closer to converting by appealing to their needs, their logic. But you've got to start with their wants. Finally, multiple buying decisions. When you're trying to get a sale, you don't want people to have to decide to buy more than one time. By that, I mean that if I click buy now, I'm giving your site a clear signal that I want to buy now. So if on the next page I have to fill out more forms and once again click the buy now button, I'm essentially being asked, are you sure you want to buy? Now, what kind of salesperson asks that? I mean, a dirt poor one asks that. So for best results, we want customers to only have to make the buying decision one time. But here's the thing, subscription payments mean that each month they have to decide once again to buy from you. So let's talk about dealing with subscription fees as a copywriter or a marketer. Every month, your user is deciding once again to buy from you. They have to make that decision. They, at that point, take the opportunity, in a lot of cases, to assess whether they used your service, and if there's even a question as to whether they did or not. Suddenly, that $49 a month that they're paying you could be $49 they use to fuel their Starbucks habit. Or it could be $49 that they put toward an unexpected expense that came up. Think about Christmas time. If you've got freelancers using your product, your cancellations are always higher at Christmas time and during the summer. That's why trying to get people into an annual plan is so powerful. If they only have to pay one time, they only have to make the buying decision one time, and you don't have to keep justifying your value to them. You don't want to have to sell every month. So a strategy here is one that my friend Patty O'Levin or Patrick McKenzie, he teaches about. If you've got a subscriber paying you monthly, reach out to him or her on month 2 or 3, which is ideally a point at which they're already starting to see some value from your product. Reach out to them then and email them with a juicy offer if they upgrade to an annual plan within a set period of time, like the next 48 hours. The offer could be savings of 35% or something really powerful. Now do the math so you offer something that won't end up costing you in the end, but don't get so greedy and say, well, if we let them stay on monthly at their current rate, we'd make all this extra money, so we can't give that up, we'll only give them 10% off. That's not what we're trying to do here. Remember, every month they're making the buying decision all over again, and that's not actually good for your business. You are bound to lose. You do not want to go up against other things, especially things that they might suddenly want that they didn't want last month, that they don't want the next billing cycle either. Those are a handful of barriers. Copy can only do so much to overcome them, but it can do a lot. Still, that's why you need to work closely with marketing, UX, and product teams to ensure that you're solving for those barriers to conversion at each point. And never underestimate the power of sneaking in a split test that the boss doesn't know about.
So to get the most out of Module 1, here are some things that you should do and keep in mind during this module. Okay, so first of all, why do you even need Module 1? I know that the urge can be to jump right into writing, but you'll notice that that's way down at the end of 10x landing pages. So do resist that urge to dive right in. We've all done the thing where we've tried to sit down and just knock out a landing page, and that doesn't work. So we're going to start by going through Module 1 and getting as much as we can out of the foundational stuff to write landing pages that convert. So it's about understanding these core concepts before you even think about writing a landing page. And that's exactly what this module is going to do. What it's going to include as you move through it are training videos, presentations, some worksheets, including PNGs and other tools, and a quiz at the end of it, which, as I mentioned in the opening video, I would not take initially. I would wait until I was done all of the training to test myself with that quiz. Now, you can do it whenever you'd like to, but just so you know, the quiz is there at the end of this module. So, a big part of this module is going to be the rule of one. The rule of one is huge and it's at the core of writing landing pages that convert. And these are the 4 parts of the rule of one. When you are writing a landing page, you have one reader, one big idea, one promise, and one offer. Okay, that's the rule of one reader, one big idea, one promise, one offer, and you're going to get into that in this module. By the end of this module, you'll understand the real barriers that your copy is fighting against. You'll understand what conversion copy is and why your landing page needs it. You'll get an overview of the rule of one and then dig deep into its 4 critical parts, which we're going to, of course, cover in the clinics as well. And you'll get yourself, set up to shape your page well by thinking about your one reader's stage of awareness. So this is how we start to get closer and closer to writing pages that convert. And you'll push beyond the basic stages of awareness to explore and consider visitor intent as well. You can complete these videos in about an hour or less, and I do recommend that you watch them before you move on to any of the other modules. So best of luck, fire away. When we talk about conversion copywriting, it can be hard to identify what it really is because it's something that's newer, even though it's based in older, proven ways of writing to get people to say yes. It can be hard still for people who are new to it to really understand. At its core, conversion copywriting is different from the copywriting you may be used to because it is measured by whether or not a person converted. So when we're talking about something like copywriting, you might see an agency copywriter do. You're usually measuring that copy based on how likable it is. Did the client feel good about it? Is it clever? Is it something that makes you feel but doesn't necessarily make you act? So that doesn't mean conversion copywriting won't also make you feel. We'll be using emotion as well with conversion copywriting, but it is not the kind of thing that you're thinking about when you're writing a tagline or coming up with a concept for an ad. I have background in that world as well, so for me, it's pretty easy to tell the difference. But if you haven't written taglines before or put together billboards or things like that, then it can be hard to know the difference. But ultimately, it comes down to getting the reader and thinking of them as a reader, of course, getting that reader to the point of yes. And to do that, we don't rely on the power of sitting around a boardroom table and brainstorming as a creative group. As great as that can be for some things, that's not what we do when we're writing copy that converts. So we're going to use voice of customer data, all of these things you're learning about in 10x landing pages. They don't apply just to landing pages, but they apply immediately to landing pages, but we'll use them throughout all of the conversion copywriting that you'll do. If you take 10x emails, you'll also find that you're using the same things we're talking about here because it's all about conversion copywriting. So using that voice of customer data, those frameworks, the formulas, the proven persuasion techniques, that means having an account with Deep Dive, so DEEP DYVE. That's where you can access online journals. So you can read about what academics are learning in their studies of how people make decisions, how millennials make decisions, how people make decisions on mobile versus in a store itself versus on a larger device versus at their desktop. So all of those things are going to inform how we go about writing copy to get the yes. We have to understand as much as we possibly can about our one reader's context. And that context is huge, right? It's not just where they're standing, but it's like the world in which they're living at that moment. So what's happening in their lives that's driving them to come seek out a solution like ours today? And of course, believing that there's really no reason for a person who's in the right stage of awareness, there's no reason for them not to move on an offer we make them today, as long as we make them the offer that matches where they're at and where we want them to be, versus where we really hope they'll be. Like, oh, let's hope that today they're, even if they're in an early stage of awareness, like they're only pain or problem aware, we're going to try to get them to buy today. That's generally problematic, and that's something that a conversion copywriter would hesitate to move forward on. So there's a lot that goes into thinking about how to write copy that converts. But this is the general definition, and the more you go through 10x landing pages, the more all of this stuff will come together, and you'll see that it's not about being clever in any way, shape, or form. It's not about wordsmithing. And problematically for some writers, you have to abandon a lot of the stuff that you're most proud of as a writer. So what conversion copywriting can do for you, if you are a writer who writes on the side, let's say you've got a novel in your desk that you're just like dying to finish. Some of us have like 30 that we've got on our desktops, right, that you're working away at, that you're chipping away at. That's good. Keep doing that. That'll be a great creative outlet for you. And conversion copywriting will be helpful in keeping your skills sharp when it comes to writing and getting the discipline of writing down and of writing with that audience in mind, which is very hard for most writers to do. People who come into copywriting because they like writing have a hard time leaving behind the idea that it's not going to be about them. Their writing matters, but the only thing that the user or the prospect or the one reader, as we call it, should see on the page is themselves, not your beautiful words, not something that your creative director might sign off on, but rather themselves. So here is the definition. Naturally, I reserve the right to modify it at any point. We invented the term or coined it, conversion copywriting. So we get to change it as we want to, but ultimately this is where we're at with what it really is, knowing that so much of it comes from the direct response world, but we're marrying that with what psychologists are constantly learning, what academics are learning and sharing and publishing studies on, what we're learning as we run A/B tests, what user experience is all about. We're also worried about and considering search and what our writing will do when it comes to search, how it works with ads that we may not be critically involved in actually writing, but how it all works together and how our copy can impact how much a click is or is not worth, how much it costs or how little it costs. So there's a lot that a conversion copywriter has to think about. This definition scratches the surface of it, but it's essential. If you walk away with nothing, walk away with this definition. Now, of course, conversion copy, for a lot of us, if you're new to conversion copywriting, you're probably looking forward to testing. So we do live in this world of A/B testing. That's what it was really born out of. When we have all of this great research and all of these wonderful insights and frameworks, how do we know if it's going to work? How do we know that we don't know everything? It's hard to get inside our one reader's head. So what do we do? And that's what A/B testing can help us with. Now, A/B testing challenges conversion copywriting when you're measuring it on the wrong thing or when you have the wrong kind of traffic coming to a landing page, let's say. So A/B testing is a great thing because it can say this one converts more people. But the problem is if you've got a page that's attracting a whole bunch of people, but you really only want to focus in on this smaller group of those visitors and sell the crap out of them, what if your A/B test proves that that the conversion copy that was designed for that smaller group is not actually going to help that or convert the larger group when it comes down to it? If that, hopefully that makes sense, and it will make sense the more you go through this. But know that testing is great. The narrower of a group you're writing for, the narrower the traffic to that page should usually be. But we can get into that more as we work through and as you work through this course. Now, of course, when we're talking about A/B testing, we are talking about growth marketing, growth hacking, marketing experimentation, all that kind of stuff. So if you are internal or you're working with a group internally, you'll usually find yourself in the growth department. That could be product marketing if growth is critically tied to what product marketing does, or if your growth hackers or growth marketers live in product marketing. Whatever the case, if you are in-house and you're not in a group that's focused on growth, it's usually worth talking to your manager about how to get you into the group that's all about growth, because that's what you're here to do. You might find yourself in a creative department, and that might not be the right place for you to be. And of course, if you're in this growth team, you have to get really comfortable with speaking the language of marketing experimentation. So keep that in mind, that as you work through everything in this course, do keep your ears open for A/B testing and multivariate testing and all of the language that is attached to what it means to test. Now, when we talk about being a conversion copywriter who lives in a world of testing, a lot of our clients get excited at the possibility of a win. Oh, you're going to write copy for us and we're going to test it and there's going to be a great win. But what you should take away is that learning is winning. Research is a huge part of what you'll do as a conversion copywriter. So the more you can learn, the better you can iterate and the closer you can get to tests that quote unquote win or that bring in big revenue lifts. That said, I recommend that you never, ever, 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 ever guarantee a win. You shouldn't guarantee anything with your services other than that you'll do them on time to the best of your ability. And well, that's really it. So outside of that, I wouldn't recommend that you guarantee anything because there are far too many unknowns and you have to allow yourself some time in the early stages of, let's say, a testing roadmap to figure out what works for that one reader versus what does not work for that one reader. Make good hypotheses based on research, but know that you won't know until you put it out there and test. That's one of the huge reasons that we test, is because exposing 100% of traffic to something that might not be the right thing to say is problematic for the business. So don't guarantee anything. Guarantee that you will be there to be involved in the split test and that you will, of course, get the work done on time. But other than that, it's really about taking away these learnings. You should, of course, then always guarantee a learning. And then, of course, you should be careful to make sure that the next time you run a test is based on what you've learned before. So there's a tendency to run a test, say, oh, that didn't work, and like abandon, or oh, that worked, and think you know what you should do more of now. So just be careful as you go through and run copy tests that you're taking away the right learning from something and that you're using it to create the copy for the next test. And that doesn't mean that you have to like narrow in on or zoom in on what you learned there. It could just mean, hey, we learned this one thing, but what if we could convert more people by going in the other direction? Whatever it is, when you're actually in the testing phase, just be careful that you are doing what you can do in order to get the learning. Okay, so here is the actual conversion copywriting process. What it comes down to when you're talking to a conversion copywriter, and when you are a conversion copywriter, you are likely to be talking about 3 critical phases in the conversion copywriting process. Those are research and discovery, writing and wireframing, and testing and learning. We start with research and discovery. It's in the top left. We move over to writing and wireframing, and then we go to testing and learning, and then we go back and do more of the same. So it's a cyclical process. Optimization never ends. We always want to go through what's happening here, what you're seeing here on the screen. Now, what you're seeing are 3 equally weighted boxes on the screen, and they won't always be equally weighted. So when you first start working on a project, you may find that you're going to go deep on research and discovery, and that your half or more of your actual time allotted for that round one, that first, let's say landing page, of course, in this case, that you're going to write, that will be heavily focused on research and discovery. Then you'll do some writing and wireframing, and of course, then you'll test and learn. But that would be round one, where you're going deep on research and discovery. Round two, after you've done that test and you've learned something, you may find that you then go do a lot less research and discovery, but now you're going to spend more time based on how much you're learning. You're going to spend more time on writing and wireframing, coming up with a whole bunch of variations, because you're learning this interesting stuff and you're able to take more time thinking, okay, well, I've learned that my one reader is this person in this stage of awareness, and these are some of the beliefs that they have. These are their limiting beliefs. These are things that they want to get out of it. Which one should we lead with? If we were to use ADA as a framework versus the 4Ps, what would that be like? And you'll start moving through, taking what you're learning and applying it when you're actually writing and, of course, wireframing. So a lot more you may find in round two. There might be a lot more writing and wireframing, and of course then testing and learning. And hopefully testing and learning is never the smallest part of your page. Although now that I say that, research and discovery is huge, writing and wireframing are huge as well, and testing alone isn't that big, but the learning part of it, running the test and then having that post-mortem where you talk about what you've learned and what to do next, that shouldn't be taken lightly. Okay, so now let's unpack these three phases in the conversion copywriting process. So what are we dealing with when we're talking about research and discovery? Let's start with that one because it's where you'll begin. So if you're a conversion copywriter, if you're freelance, you'll generally do everything you're seeing here yourself, unless you're working with an organization that has a market research team or some sort of research team internally. But I find when I'm freelancing, I end up running a bunch of this stuff, and I'll work with the internal analytics person, but I won't necessarily have a huge other department to work with. Now, that's different when you're working with like IBM. Of course, you've got access to a lot of things, but there's nothing but bottlenecks when you're working with a large organization. And so you may think, oh, well, if I work with a quote unquote big fish, they'll have all this stuff. I recommend that you make sure that you are deeply involved in the surveys, in the interviews, in all of that initial research, because market researchers and those research departments are not looking for the right message. That's not their goal. If it is, they're usually looking for, let's say, a value proposition or something that's more abstracted from raw data. You need raw data. You also need the abstractions, but you need the raw data to find your message, to find the language that's actually worth testing and the problems that people are having and how they describe them, the ideal world they wish they were living in, things like that. You need to get in there and get deep in there. So there will be some cases where you won't necessarily have to do all of this stuff if you're working with an organization that already understands that you find your message in your voice of customer data. But if you're not working with such an organization, you are likely to find that you're going to run the surveys, you're going to run the interviews, definitely you're going to do the review mining, you'll put the poll question on the page, you'll have to figure out what that question is and what problem you're trying to solve, what question you're trying to answer for that landing page in particular. You'll put the heat maps on there, and if you use something like Hotjar, a lot of this stuff just is baked right into it, and all you have to do once that code is installed is set up the poll question and then look at the heat maps and watch the recordings. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list of ways that you can research here. There's so many other ways as well, but these are kind of core to what we do. If you don't look at these, I would go like, why didn't you do that? You'd probably find X, Y, or Z if you had gone and done a poll where you could immediately understand what your landing page is lacking because you had a pop-up poll, like a slide up from the below, with a question that you could then get an answer to that would help you rewrite or at least craft a hypothesis for what you need to do on the next iteration of that landing page. So lots of things there, lots of things for you to consider. Usertesting.com. You're going to learn all about this stuff anyway in this course, so do watch that. Watch the module that's all about research in this course. And things that we don't talk about are like going through support transcripts and chat transcripts. That can be like extremely enlightening. And if you don't have chat on a landing page, See if you can get it installed on the landing page, and then actually man the chat. Or if someone else has to man it because you don't have the answers that people need, make sure that they do, and then that they save those chat transcripts and that you get access to them. Because holy crap, just seeing what people are wondering when they're on the landing page you're trying to optimize, that's how you get inside their head. They're only looking for answers, and they're telling you what answers they need. So those transcripts can go a long way. Then, after research and discovery, so you do that and you synthesize what you learn. So you don't just have a bunch of stuff there that's all dumped into a Dropbox folder, but you go through it all and you move it into a report. Our solution error story is built with that in mind, with taking all of these different ideas, all of this research, this data you're coming up with, putting those into cards, and then dragging and dropping those cards onto a document so you can have that synthesis there on the page. It's just a report is what we generally call it, your messaging report, where you're dragging and dropping in these pieces that you're taking from surveys, interviews, review minds, everything, all the insights you're getting from polls. Maybe you have the heat map saved as an image in Error Story that you can then drag onto the page itself, the chat transcripts, all of it goes in, and you synthesize it and have takeaways that lead to hypotheses for what you should be writing, what actually goes on the page, and of course, whom you're actually speaking to. So what does that look like? All of the things that you're going to learn about in 10x landing pages, and that you're probably learning about if you follow copy hackers at all. So having that spit draft, that initial first draft that's just there to help you organize your messages, figuring out what your voice is, using frameworks, formulas, templates, tapping into what academics know and are sharing, and what people who run A/B tests know and are sharing, knowing that you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but that it may help inform what you're going to write. All of the ways that Cialdini talks about persuasion, what you know about people's beliefs, what their values are, what their emotional triggers are. And of course, then comes wireframing in whatever tool you use to wireframe. I use a combination of Photoshop and Balsamiq. Those are two good things. Balsamiq, though, I use in the mode that doesn't look like a sketch. You change it so it looks like a UI, and it cleans things up very nicely. So writing and wireframing is where you take everything from research and discovery, your analysis that you've got there, and you start organizing it on the page based on everything you're going to learn in 10x landing pages. Then comes testing and learning. And we often talk about testing with like, oh, A/B testing. And yes, A/B testing is part of it, or multivariate testing, whatever it is, multi-arm bandit testing, all of those things. Okay, that's one thing. But before you even get there, to mitigate risk and to see if you're doing things right, you can do 5-second tests and usability tests. And you'll learn more about this in 10x landing pages as well. So you can actually just take pieces of what you're writing, and instead of going out and just A/B testing them and exposing your traffic that could convert or could not convert to those new messages of yours, you can put a screenshot on 5-second tests, 5-second tests, and just ask the questions that you're trying to answer with that copy and see if people in general answer and understand what you're trying to say, so they're able to answer those questions. And that can help you drive further and further to a point of clarity. Again, watch all of 10x landing pages so you see any of the nuances around this. This is just a high level summary for you as you're starting to get in to writing 10x landing pages. Before and after can be problematic. Like I've got this as the 5th note here under testing and learning, this before and after idea. But a lot of us have clients that want us to work on landing pages that they will not have a ton of traffic driving to, enough to, let's say, actually split test. So what do we do with those? Well, it's not reliable, but we can say, okay, well, this was converting. People were downloading, 3% of visitors to this page were downloading the ebook when it looked like this and when it sounded like this. When we came in and did this new landing page for the same ebook, we got 6% conversion rate. Okay, so that's not anything that you could write a blog post about or that you could make into necessarily a case study that would be that credible, but you and your client know it's working, right? That's a big part of making sure that the client feels good. And now if that conversion rate drops on the new variation, you have to learn from that too with this before and after. So be sure that you're not trying to look for the wins all the time, because you will have a lot of non-winners that win insofar as learning is concerned, but not insofar as conversion rates are concerned. So big takeaway there is there are lots of ways to measure outside of A/B testing, although A/B testing is ultimately, for now at least, the be-all and end-all of measuring how things are working. When you do something like personalization, that's yet another example of where you may have to rely on before and after versus A/B testing, because personalization is built differently. But usually whatever personalization tool you're using, or your behavioral marketing tool, whichever one you're using, they will help you understand, using split testing, whether that personalization is actually working. Now, when you look at these, all of these things, it might start to look like research and discovery and testing and learning are closer to each other than writing and wireframing are, because testing and learning is a big part of research and discovery. So you may find yourself doing what's here on the page, where you have a flow that combines, it doesn't combine into one, but it considers as closely tied together research, discovery, testing, learning, because they feed into each other. And they also, of course, feed into what you write and wire. But writing and wireframing is a different skill set. You have to do the writing and wireframing. You don't have to do the research, discovery, testing, and learning. You don't have to do any of those things on the left. You just have to use them as inputs. So you may find that when you're a conversion copywriter or working in conversion copywriting, everything that's here on the left is done by someone like Peplaya, right, or a conversion consultant, where maybe they don't do it, but they make recommendations to do it, and then they also make recommendations for somebody to come in and interpret that into better converting copy. That's neither here nor there, but the point is, don't be surprised if you're often brought in for everything that's here on the right, and the stuff that's on the left has already been considered, and now it's your job to go through it and make sense of it, which is extremely high value work. Okay? Now, the result of this, compared to other forms of copywriting, the result of this is informed, data-driven copywriting. And if there's a business on the planet that doesn't want that, I would be shocked. I haven't met them. So what it comes down to for conversion copywriting, always start with research. Always do a spit draft in a wire, and then write over that using voice of customer data, using what you learn about persuasion, using everything you're going to learn in 10x landing pages, and then always be involved in that testing process. Never simply dive into the writing. Conversion copywriters don't do that. And even if you don't want to identify as a conversion copywriter, which is totally fine, still don't dive into the writing immediately. That's not going to get you anywhere near as far as it'll get you to follow this process.
Okay, there is a difference between copywriting and conversion copywriting. The term copywriting can cover all manner of writing. It even extends by some standards into the realm of like content creation, such as, blogging and writing ebooks. Generally, it seems that if a marketer writes something, anything, it's a form of copywriting. So copywriting has traditionally included taglines, brochures, commercials, print ads, long-form sales letters and pages, advertorials, emails, websites, billboards. The list goes on. A lot of stuff. And by the way, I have actually written all of the above and done so more than I care to recall. Okay, so basically, anything that can be written and that is customer facing is called copywriting. But all of that stuff is not conversion copywriting. So we at Copy Hackers coined the term conversion copywriting back in 2012 to describe any copywriting that is intended to move the prospect to act. We started by calling it conversion-focused copywriting, and then, we just dropped the word focus because it was just too much to say. So that left us with conversion copywriting. That's where it comes from. So when you think about the goal of conversion copywriting, which is, again, to move the prospect to act, you can see that it's not actually like traditional copywriting, even though direct response copywriters have been doing it for years. So what do I mean by that? Well, okay, taglines don't move prospects to act. They're there largely for branding purposes. And when they're good, they're there for the purpose of expressing a value proposition. Commercials only rarely move people to act, and the same is true for billboards. So if a tagline, a billboard, a commercial, brochure, or print ad actually moves a prospect to act, it's usually a fluke or not intentional. Now, when we're writing conversion copy, that movement to act is intentional. It is our whole point. That might make you think that conversion copywriting is really just like direct response copywriting. But it's not direct response either. Okay, how so? Well, direct response is often pretty aggressive, right? Direct response has a hard time working on and impacting increasingly skeptical audiences. It works on some, sure, but when you're trying to sell a $9 a month subscription to your task manager software to a business, direct response with its, bold claims, its guarantees, its bonuses, and its bright red fonts is really unlikely to do the trick. So with conversion copywriting, where we intend to move the prospect to act, we take the best of direct response and the best of old school copywriting, and we throw in the following: insights from academic studies in consumer decision making or persuasion, the results of A/B and multivariate tests, sales strategies, and principles of UX and UI design. All of those things together inform conversion copywriting. Now, we will not be covering all of those things individually. They're woven into the chorus, into the way we think about conversion copywriting. On the path to moving the prospect to act, we persuade in subtle ways. We lay on direct response tricks. We play the role of salesperson. We organize our messages with the user experience in mind. We play with voice, with personality and tone. And of course, we split test to be sure. That's what we're talking about when we talk about conversion copywriting. In a perfect world, every single person that arrives on your site would be a great prospect. They'd all be the right fit for your product or your service. But, this is not a perfect world, obviously, and that is just not the reality of the traffic that's coming to your site or any site. Now, chances are good that before taking this course, you might have heard me say this: you should always write copy targeted at the 20 to 35% of your traffic that is most likely to be part of your ideal market segment. Those people are your best prospects. They are likely to have the following qualities in common. They need and want what you're offering. They're going to buy from you. They're going to be happy with what they buy from you. They'll tell their peers, and they'll keep buying from you. Those things make up a great prospect. Those people become the perfect customer. So they need, they pay, they're happy, they recommend, and they return for more. Now, think about the visitors to your site today. Is there any way that 100% of that traffic has those 5 qualities in common? I mean, you would actually be lucky if 35% of them did. When you write for your best prospects, writing becomes a lot easier. You don't have to be so vague, and you don't have to water down your messages trying to please everyone. When we're writing copy, we're trying to help our prospects see themselves on the page. Specific examples can do that. Testimonials from people just like those people can do that. Describing real life outcomes they're looking for can do exactly that. In a perfect world, every single person that arrives on your site would be a great prospect. They'd all be the right fit for your product or your service. But, this is not a perfect world, obviously, and that is just not the reality of the traffic that's coming to your site or any site. Now, chances are good that before taking this course, you might have heard me say this: you should always write copy targeted at the 20 to 35% of your traffic that is most likely to be part of your ideal market segment. Those people are your best prospects. They are likely to have the following qualities in common. They need and want what you're offering. They're going to buy from you. They're going to be happy with what they buy from you. They'll tell their peers, and they'll keep buying from you. Those things make up a great prospect. Those people become the perfect customer. So they pay, they're happy, they recommend, and they return for more. Now, think about the visitors to your site today. Is there any way that 100% of that traffic has those 5 qualities in common? I mean, you would actually be lucky if 35% of them did. When you write for your best prospects, writing becomes a lot easier. You don't have to be so vague and you don't have to water down your messages trying to please everyone. When we're writing copy, we're trying to help our prospects see themselves on the page. Specific examples can do that. Testimonials from people just like those people can do that. Describing real life outcomes they're looking for can do exactly that. Now, how do you get a strong and reliable sense for who makes up that 20 to 35%? Well, you ask and you listen. Now, that could mean doing customer surveys and on-site surveys and then comparing the results. So if 70% of your customers responding to your survey fit into, let's say, the category designer, and if only 25% of respondents to your on-site survey identify as designer, then you've got yourself a strong understanding of who's actually buying your products. Are designers referring other designers to you? Well, then you find that out by asking new customers to tell you who referred them to you. Great. Are your customers happy with you? Send out a 1-question email asking them to rate you on a scale of 1 star to 5 stars. This is very fast and easy. I mean, these are all questions that you can get answers to. And in the end, you might learn that although you thought you were building something for, say, designers, creative directors, and product managers, your best prospects and the ones you should be writing for turn out to be designers. Why? Because they need and want what you're offering. They've bought from you. They're happy with you. They tell their friends about you, and they want to keep buying from you. That doesn't mean you have to exclude the other segments. Like in this example, you don't have to exclude creative directors and product managers. They can still be in your head when you're writing. They're just not the people you're writing for. Now, as your business changes and grows, you may add new market segments to your ideal prospects. You will, of course, need to update your email and your website copy accordingly, but you should be doing that anyway. And it's actually a pretty high-class problem to have to go update your site for the new members of your audience. If your problem this time next year is that you need to create a bunch of targeted landing pages for the 2 new market segments that have fallen in love with your product, and you need to update your homepage, well, kudos to you. Things are working out great. That's a great problem that others would envy. It's a good problem to have.
All right, excellent. You are ready to move on to Module 2. Well done. So here's what you can expect in Module 2, and basically, first of all, why you need Module 2. So a big part of conversion copywriting is this research to find your message, because your best performing messages are not sitting in your head. So when you go and sit down to write your next landing page, it's a bad idea to start by just like opening a landing page template that you may purchase somewhere, or just opening up a document and staring ahead and hoping that you'll be able to fill in the template with Lord knows what, or you'll just come up with stuff from scratch if you're writing on like a blank document. That's problematic. Again, the best messages are not sitting in your head. Instead, they're sitting in the actual language that your visitors, your prospects, your customers, your ex-customers, that they are actually using, the things that they're saying. So we want to start by doing the research, which is what this module is all about, and finding in that research the test-worthy messages that will actually make it onto your page at some point, ideally in Module 3, and again, of course, in Module 4. So in this module, you can expect to see some training videos, some presentations, some worksheets, and we'll finish off with a quiz. Now, to write 10x landing pages, you need to find your message, and we find that in what we call voice of customer data. And it's not just us that calls it that. Everybody calls it that. So it's voice of customer data, which is really that quote unquote data that's shared with us by our customers, again, by our prospects and those ex-customers that we've got. We want to listen to what they say, and in that, find the messages that are more likely to convert people who are like them. We find that data, in this course at least, in things like surveys, polls on the landing page you're there to optimize, or a landing page that's similar to the one you want to optimize, in review mining, which can be on Amazon, it can be TripAdvisor, anywhere where the people are leaving reviews. That's a great place to go. Usertesting.com is brilliant. I love it. And in interviews. So you're going to learn about all of these in this module. You are going to be able to finish the module knowing how to ask customers questions that are actually going to help you write better copy. Because the last thing you need to do is send a survey to a list of people only to waste their time on questions that you don't even need the answers to. You'll learn how to use polls. This is huge for landing page optimization. And there are things outside of what we're going to talk about in this module that can also help you optimize landing pages, like heat maps. But polls are a really great way to get information right on the page. You'll arm yourself with the ability to generate this data even if you don't have customers or visitors. So if you're starting with a brand new, like you're just now starting to use landing pages, let's say, and you've got a small website and the idea of being able to put a poll on there, or that you even have a list of people to survey, you might not have any of those, and that's okay. A lot of us are in the same boat. So we're going to show you some ways to find messages even if you don't have customers to pull those messages from. You'll also see why 7 interviews are going to be more revealing than 1,000 survey responses. And of course, just so you know, you don't necessarily need to complete all the research techniques that we're going to teach in this module. What I recommend is that you conduct just 2 forms of message finding research before you move on to module 3. Once you're done this, you'll be able to use these messages again and again across all your marketing. Now, depending on how much you do that's just landing page specific, that'll be useful for landing pages specifically, or those landing pages for that one reader, that one audience. But generally, you can use this stuff from the research phase all over the place, and these messages are likely to have a 2-year shelf life unless your business changes or your audience changes. When we're talking about messages that are found in voice of customer data, what you find in this phase could last you, in this module could last you for 2 whole years. So go forth and get her done.
With all our training, you should go through it actively working on a copywriting project. This doesn't have to be a real project, although it's great if it is. The best project to work on is one you're actually excited about. So try pretending that your dream client or employer wanted you to write or rewrite something for them. Think of that dream client now. Who are they? Congrats, they are your client for this training. Fake client, but still. If you don't have a dream client, try any of the companies listed here. Next, what are you going to write for them using this training? A webinar sign-up page, an ebook download page, a Google Ads landing page? Once you've got a sample client or product and what you want to write for them in mind, you can move forward with the next lesson. Big ideas are great big benefits. There's something your prospect badly wants to believe that you can offer them. There are big, powerful benefits that start with things like saving time, saving money, making more friends, keeping more friends, getting the date of your dreams, getting the date that will turn into the one, getting laid, getting married to the person you never thought you'd get, getting pregnant naturally, being the world's greatest parent even when you both work long hours, starting a business in your spare time, getting your first 1,000 subscribers, quitting your job to invest in yourself, making your first $1 million, right? The list goes on and on. They're big ideas. They're not small and they're not hard to understand. Your prospects and customers are dying to tell you what big idea you should focus on your page. Now, an on-site poll is a great way to get people to tell you what's moved them most to seek you out today. Take what they tell you and test those benefits or desires as your page's big idea. Importantly, make your big idea immediately graspable and stick with it throughout the page. Once you've identified your big idea, you can interview people to dig deep into the specifics of that big idea, basically letting them write the page for you. All you have to do is listen and take notes. Your page gets one big idea, your email gets one big idea, even your blog post gets one big idea. No more and definitely no less. I like to run about 3 to 5 user tests on usertesting.com after I've conducted the rest of my research and discovery, particularly, on-site polls, interviews, and customer surveys. Now, here's why. You can do a ton with what you learn with all the other research. You could write a whole site, but you'd find yourself while writing that site asking all sorts of, smaller questions. So I like to set up user tests to help me answer those questions. I particularly like to run user tests once we've launched a new page. So users can help us see what we may have overlooked so we can make modifications and come up with, A/B testing ideas. That said, you can do user tests at any point. So create an account on usertesting.com and set up 3 tests to start with. You will be amazed by how many notes you get just by watching 3 user videos, so you don't have to overdo it. 3 should do it to begin. Use the questions they've already got in usertesting.com and just modify them lightly based on what you want users to do for what you want to learn. So start by sending users to the right page on your site, and that's the page you want to optimize. If it's a Facebook landing page, you might have to send them straight to the URL and tell them to just imagine that they've clicked a Facebook ad that says, X. I know that might sound a little hacky, and it is, but those little shortcuts bring us a lot closer to helpful insights and messaging. So land the users on the page and ask them to complete the intended goal, thinking aloud as they do. If you want visitors to the page to download a free worksheet, the user will read through the copy and move toward the goal. Some users will resist the goal and tell you why, while others will complete the goal and tell you what they're thinking as they do. This is always completely eye-opening, and it's extremely simple too, which is why I personally love it. I once conducted about 5 user tests that revealed that a claim we were making on a page was, for a lot of people, just unbelievable. The claim was that you could save 8 hours of work just by downloading a template. Users actually sat there and talked through how long it took them to do X, Y, and Z leading up to those 8 hours. And they'd say things like, that would only take me 2 hours. So we knew that we had to make that claim more believable. So we just added a simple calculator to the page to let visitors do the math themselves and convince themselves. We didn't have to make a claim in the end. We put the tools in the visitor's hands and they could quickly see that they'd save 8, 10, 15 hours with the template. So we wouldn't have known to do that without those user tests. No survey would tell you to do that. And that's why user tests are so fantastic. Hello, and let us get you started now with 10x landing pages. Welcome to the program. Welcome to getting all sorts of great landing pages out there so that you can start capturing more leads, getting more people to sign up for your webinars, and actually doing things with those thank you pages that are just sitting there doing nothing. So let's move really quickly into this because this is a foundational program. It also is something you can move really quickly through. And because of that, I don't want to take up any of your time keeping you away from it. So just to be clear, I'm Jo here from Copy Hackers. This is my program. I hope you get a ton out of it. Now, what is the purpose of 10x landing pages? Well, you just signed up for it. So you're probably pretty aware of what the purpose is. You're watching this so that you can go write some badass landing pages. I want you to be in a position where those landing pages convert 10 times as well as they currently do. And typically for that to happen, that means you're going to need more landing pages. Most people are using their home page as their landing page. It saddens me greatly. You're going to need more landing pages, but to do that, you're going to need to know what makes a landing page a distinct landing page. So I want you to be ready to write 10 times the landing pages for different readers and different stages of awareness. But just to be clear, with all of our 10x programs, there is no 10x guarantee or promise. We're not saying you're going to 10x your growth. You should treat this like you would any university level training where you take it seriously, but unlike university level training, you can apply it quickly and actually measure how it's doing and then go optimize, again, using everything you'll learn here inside 10x landing pages. Now, what is your involvement beyond treating it like a university level course? I'm going to ask you to implement. So I'm teaching you these shortcuts to get you through all of the tough stuff faster with better results. Everything here should make it easier and faster for you to implement with better results. That's the goal. However, not everything can be a shortcut. So prepare to be actively involved with every lesson in every module. There are not a lot of modules, so it's okay. Let's get you to a place though where you can 10x the number of landing pages you write, the quality of those landing pages, the overall performance of every campaign you run. And side note, if you're running campaigns without landing pages, I don't know what's going on there. And your clicks as well as your conversion rate, your sales, your revenue. We want all big measurable things. That's the whole point of conversion copywriting. Now, how are we going to make that happen here inside 10x landing pages? First, what you have at your disposal is this training program, 2 pre-recorded copy clinics, quizzes, and of course the bonus resources. I would like to encourage you to please use 10x landing pages until it becomes habit. So when someone wants you to write a summarized page, I want you to be ready to make good recommendations for targeted landing pages. I want you to refer to individual lessons, print and save worksheets, and rewatch modules before you write a word. Do the quizzes when you're ready to ace them. Okay, so for best results, it's usually great to just keep the worksheets and templates in a binder at your desk and then rewatch those recorded clinics every time you step away from landing page copywriting for an extended period of time. Such as if you haven't written a landing page in several months and you weren't a pro at it when you went through 10x landing pages the first time, go through it again. It's quick. Now, let's take a look at what's actually inside each module, starting with the intro video. That's where you'll want to see something just like what I'm sharing with you now, where I'll fly through how to get the most out of the following module. Then you'll have core lessons with transcripts. Of course, this is where I will be on camera with various hairstyles typically throughout the different programs you see me in. 10x landing pages, I have a little bob at the time. But those are the core lessons. You can go through those, learn all of the theory, and then over the shoulder tutorials, that's where we get into the practical stuff. Like here's how to actually go forth and write a landing page using that technique you just learned. There are also presentations to dig deeper into more practical stuff where it's building up on examples and it's adding to the theory that you already taken, and lesson level worksheets too. So get those, work through them, keep them handy. There's also going to be a bonus resource section that you need to check out, including 2 foundational clinics. The copy clinic number 1, which is where you identify your one reader and one offer. And the second one is where you build on that to identify the one big idea and the one promise to support it. And that is how, it's basically the high level view, of course, of how to start writing 10x landing pages using this program. Now, before you begin, what we're talking about when we're talking about landing pages, that's a big question. A landing page is generally identified by the fact that a click drove a person to land on it. Now that may seem broad, and it is, and that's typically because landing pages are, they're everywhere. You've got your opt-in or lead gen page, a product download page for people who are still downloading products. Yes, they're all over the place still. A Facebook ad landing page. So if you're driving someone to somewhere to opt in for a webinar or something like that, and again, webinars are another kind, a webinar replay page as well. Thank you pages, typically dead end pages, otherwise known as confirmation pages. A long form sales page can be a landing page. Now for copy hackers, we have a separate program called 10x sales pages that digs really deeply into it. There are 2 tracks for that with templates that are a little bit different, but the first track, track 1, is based entirely on everything you're learning inside 10x landing pages. Track 2 is a little bit different, but it still is based on everything you're learning here inside 10x landing pages. So you can use 10x landing pages to help you write a long form sales page, also to write a launch page, a bonus delivery page. So when somebody gets a bonus, it has to go on a page. You could just let that page sit there and do nothing, or you could use it to help better persuade them to be happier with their purchase, etc. An upsell page, an upgrade page, interrupters or interstitials, contest pages, replay pages, even a 404 is a landing page. So that's just like a broad view of what we're talking about with landing pages. Now, inside of that, there are different kinds of all of these things. So opt-in pages, for example, is quite a big category. You might spend most of your time actually working on opt-in pages. I can't tell you, when I was still the person who was largely doing all of the copywriting at Copy Hackers, I was in lead pages several times a day, between lead pages and Unbounce several times a day. Now my team is in lead pages and Unbounce several times a day. There's a lot to do inside opt-in pages, and these are opt-in pages. There's still other pages to do inside lead pages. So if you use lead pages or Unbounce, you will love, 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 love 10x landing pages. And in fact, this is one of the reasons that companies like lead pages and Unbounce both bring us in to do complimentary ebooks with them, to partner on that kind of stuff, to present at their conferences, all of that stuff, because you got to work on those landing pages. Okay, so we're talking about ebook download pages, everything you're seeing here on the screen. I'm not going to read through all of them for you, but when it comes down to it, basically anything that's not on your website attached to a navigation of some kind, for your footer, your global nav, whatever that might be, a sidebar navigation if you have that. Everything else is a landing page. So that includes webinar sign-up pages if you're requesting that people share something. That in itself, if you were to treat it like a landing page, it could perform so much better. So there's tons there. There's also tons in the category of thank you pages. Those are all the actual delivery of something, the opt-in, the double opt-in confirmation page. So all sorts of confirmation pages, which is really what a thank you page is. Any viral opt-ins, there's so many types of thank you pages. So if you came into this program thinking, oh yeah, I could learn how to do some landing pages, I hope that this is starting to open your eyes, if you weren't already aware, to all the different kinds of landing pages out there. One of the big questions we get so often is, what's the difference between 10x sales pages and 10x landing pages? You can use 10x landing pages to write a sales page. However, to write a landing page, you need to focus a lot more than a long-form sales page will do. So take both training programs, but keep them separate. You'll definitely see the difference when you take 10x landing pages and 10x sales pages. You'll see the difference pretty quickly between thank you pages and long form sales pages. So like pages in a basic Facebook campaign, if we were to talk about like where to use these landing pages, that's a really important question. Where are you going to put them? Very often you'll need landing pages in a Facebook campaign like this. So you have a really straightforward little flow that people go through, and these are the typical thank you pages in there. So you have an opt-in page with a thank you page for that, a delivery email that in itself might also drive to a different thank you page where you're delivering something on opt-in. So the delivery email gets them to double opt-in, and then you deliver on another thank you page, which can be a very good practice. Then you have a sales email that nurtures them toward a sales page, and there you have a thank you page. And now in there, you may also have had a webinar page in there, a webinar sign up, and all sorts of other things too. So when I have opt-in page here, again, that's a really big category. There could be any number of things happening on that. If you were to do a split test of that same Facebook campaign, you would again need more landing pages, 10x landing pages. You wouldn't just want to drive everybody necessarily to a single landing page, although you could if you were testing just the ad itself. But if you're trying to understand the two different offers, let's say from a Facebook ad, offer A would drive to one corresponding landing page and offer B would drive to another. You wouldn't drive to the same one because the offers were different. The thank you page could be the same. The delivery emails would be different because they're different offers. The sales emails and the sales page could be the same, but you'd have that different, a thank you page as well. So hopefully you can start to imagine the ways that you'll use 10x landing pages. Now, if you're in Copy School and you're taking 10x landing pages as part of it, you'll be so glad to know that Facebook ads covered in 10x in Copy School. So are the 10x landing pages you're seeing here, those delivery emails covered, sales emails covered. If you do launches, that's also covered. Long form sales pages covered. Thank you page covered, of course, right here. And outside of this flow, we have the standard website, which is also covered inside Copy School. If you're not in it, join it. All right, now I would like you to go forward, please, and start by watching Module 1, work your way through it. Watch every video. You can typically watch them on super fast anyway. Download what you need to and do the work. And as I always say, after my one glorious year of teaching in Japan, what all the students would say to each other when they were a little like nervous and scared of like, oh, can I get this question right? Do I know the answer to this if they're talking in class? and everybody says gambate or gambare, depends on where you're from, the different way that you say it. Nonetheless, gambate. I wish you absolutely the best, and I hope that everything works out brilliantly for you and that the training supports you. If you need any help along the way, you can email us at support@copyhackers.com. When we're interviewing to find our message, we need to be prepared to spend about 45 minutes to an hour with the person we're interviewing one-on-one. And that's because we need to establish enough of a rapport that the interviewee is likely to open up to us. After all, we're trying to get deeper than the surface. I mean, that's where the gold is. And that's what interviews in particular are great for. So I found that I need about 7 one-on-one interviews to get the messaging gold that I would need from about 500 survey respondents. Here's why interviews are great, in my experience. You can explore tangents that reveal deeper motivators and more intensely felt benefits during a conversation. You can see the pain in the person's eyes, you can hear it in their voices, and that close proximity to real emotion helps you write richer copy, the kind of copy the reader feels and is moved by, not because of tricks, but because of the feelings you stir based on what you know matters. You can repeat back what you hear and they'll further refine the message for you, which clarifies what they mean. So you get stories, anecdotes, specific scenarios, all these things that few surveys can uncover. Plus, you get all the good stuff you'd normally get in a survey, like actual words to use and insights into your value prop. Do the interview in person if you can. Do it on the phone if you must. If you can't meet up in person, try to meet on Skype, and here's why. Seeing the interviewee's face will help you, and letting them see your face will help them. All that nonverbal communication is a huge part of interviews. Now, I know that a few people rush to do interviews. I mean, they're kind of out of your comfort zone. I get it. But I've also done hundreds of interviews now, and I wouldn't keep doing them if they didn't work. That said, there are a handful of problems that you'll run into in your earlier interviews. Things like working too hard to establish rapport, only to end up kind of chasing your interviewee down tangents and wasting a lot of time. That happens. Failing to set expectations well up front, and then facing resistance from the interviewee who might think you're there to, sell them something. Getting lumped in as a friend or confidant, and then you only really hear the best or the worst of the person's experiences, and you're not allowed to keep that sense of objectivity. Also, the interviewee might start kind of speaking for the general population instead of speaking about their actual experience. So the list goes on, right? And sometimes you just can't help it. Bad or useless interviews do happen. But here's a good way to help it. Have 2 people run the interview, you and a partner. This is something I started doing after I saw how the guys at the Rewired group conduct a Jobs to Be Done interview. They do it together. And what I love about 2-person interviewing teams is that you've got someone to bring the conversation back on track if it goes off on a tangent, or if, the interviewee speaks in hypotheticals instead of in actuals. It's also fantastic to have 2 people taking notes and asking questions. So it's a great use of time because there's no dead air while you're writing and they're done speaking. When it's just you and there's dead air, the interviewee kind of feels some sort of sense of pressure to fill that silence, and that can lead to tangential, unhelpful thoughts. You can also imagine how great it is to have 2 sets of notes instead of 1 in the end, so you can see what each person thought was interesting, what language stuck out to each of you, and where there's overlap. So if you're new to interviewing, I recommend you start by 1, practicing interviewing with someone you know, and 2, interviewing in a 2-person team. Have a notepad in front of you. Record the conversation in case you want to review it later or get it transcribed. Set expectations up front so they know how long it will take, if it will be anonymized, that you won't be pitching them, things like that, etc., etc. Schedule at least twice the number of interviews that you want to have. Usually I'm looking for 7 interviews, and I set up about 20 of them. That's because people flake out. They just do. It happens, right? To prevent flakes, you may want to reward the interviewee with something simple, like a $25 gift card. The thing you give them should be just valuable enough to encourage them to show up, but not so valuable that they'll think you're kind of paying them for really good news or really bad news. And finally, don't overscript your questions. Have a few questions in mind, but avoid reading off a list of questions, because you may find that they start answering as if they're being surveyed, and that's not good at all. Have a list of questions handy, but let what the interviewee tells you guide the way. And if you're really keen on getting interviewing right, follow the Rewired group and attend one of their workshops on interviewing for product ideas. You'll find that the path to product ideas is littered with fantastic copy you can swipe. And of course, tell the guys at the Rewired group that Joanna sent you.
All right, excellent. You are moving on to Module 3. That's fantastic. Here is a quick overview of what you can expect to find in Module 3. So first of all, why would you need to watch Module 3? Well, you've got the essentials in place now. So you're starting to think more like a conversion copywriter. Even if that's not what you call yourself, you're starting to think more like one so that you can write really stellar landing pages. Of course, by now you've also collected a variety of messages and you're in a really good place to start laying out your messages. You just don't really necessarily know how to lay those messages out yet. So it takes a lot more than just, dropping messages on the page based on what strikes you as interesting or what you think more people need to hear based on the fact that a lot of people, let's say in your survey, if you had a lot of people say something and you might think that belongs to the top of the page, but we need to figure out where it really goes. So we're going to break your page into sections, really easy, simple sections that allow you to move that one reader's stage of awareness, so to match it, and then move them to the point where they can act. So we want to match where they're at and move them by the end of the page to an action that makes sense based on where they are and where we need them to arrive at. Okay, so what are you going to get in this module? You're going to get more of what you're getting used to. So great training videos, some presentations, worksheets, and of course, a quiz. Now, as we go through this, we're not going to talk that much about a messaging hierarchy when you're actually in the training. But you do need a messaging hierarchy when you're laying out your landing pages. And so what is a messaging hierarchy? What are we really working toward when I say you need a messaging hierarchy? We want to know the order in which your messages need to appear on your page for your one reader. So some people like to believe that they have a messaging hierarchy that applies across the board, and you don't. That's simply because your one reader in a stage of awareness with a level of intent and different things going on that wants to hear X, Y, and Z in that order may be different from a different one reader that you've got in that stage of awareness with their level of intent coming from their own unique context. They might need a different messaging hierarchy. So we have to consider that as we are putting together our landing page. What does my one reader need to hear, and in what order does he or she need to hear it in order to act by the time they get to the end of the page? We're also going to think about one of the bigger concepts in landing pages, which you're probably familiar with, and that is message matching. So your messaging hierarchy, as you're thinking through it, it needs to consider the messages that you've got to match. And the stage of awareness, of course, as I mentioned, that has to be matched at the top of the page. As you work through Module 3, you will think of where your visitors are coming from and what stage they're in before you write the top of the page. And of course, message matching is just the beginning. Then we want to move down the page and we'll have formulas and frameworks to help you figure out what to put on the page. And by the time you get to the bottom of the page, what to do. How should people be feeling? Your one reader, what should they be ready to do next? And what more do you need to say or do you need to cut in order to make it clearer and crisper and more persuasive for that one reader to choose to act by the time they get well beyond that opening and they're ready to start getting closed at the end of your landing page. Okay, so in this module, I'm going to show you by the time you end this module how you can easily divide your page to conquer pieces of it at a time. We're going to separate your work into the what and the how, which is a pretty big deal. We're going to talk through some spit drafting, which is a terrible name for something that's actually really awesome and extremely useful. You're going to use some frameworks to organize your messages, and we're going to get you thinking even more strategically. You're already being very strategic about your landing page at this point, but we're going to think even more strategically about how to organize your messages so you can hold your visitors' attention down the page and help that one reader that you're writing for make the right decision to say yes to your one offer by the time they get to the end of your page. Okay, so you can complete these videos pretty quickly. I do recommend that you take your time and follow the 1090 system that you're going to learn about here, so you can get the most out of every landing page that you're going to write. All right, do your best. You've got this.
Review mining is the most fun. It's also something that gets easier and more interesting the more you do it. Now, here's the idea behind review mining. People that are similar to your prospects are reviewing or talking about products, services, solutions, and ideas that are similar to what you're selling or offering. They're doing this online already in product reviews, in blog post comments, in forums all over the place. They're doing it on Reddit, TripAdvisor, Yelp, Amazon, and in more niche marketplaces. So your job is to go to those places and just listen to them. Now, here's what's really great about it. Review mining lets you go out and listen to what your prospects or people who are similar to your ideal customer are saying without interrupting them and without filtering them, without worrying that they're trying to impress you or find a suitable answer, as can often happen, in interviews and in surveys. At Copy Hackers, some of our most winning copy was found online in Amazon book reviews, in forums, and even in customer and support emails. So we found the headline, "If you think you need rehab, you do," in a book review for a book about alcoholism. That headline brought in more than 20% more leads for the rehab center, which amounted to tens of thousands of dollars every single month. Another example, we crafted the headline, "Big bum, thick waist, not so perky boobs," out of the natural way that women were talking about themselves on a forum. That headline with an optimized button brought in nearly 125% more clicks to start a trial. And a third example, we found the winning headline, "Eliminate up to 99% of paper," in a testimonial. So when no other headline worked, and we tested a lot of them, that headline did. Now, why did those lines of copy make the cut? Why did we read them and decide to turn them into copy? Well, we started with a competitor content audit. We always do, and you always should. So we knew that in the case of the rehab center, for example, competing rehabs were talking in a kind of formal and what I would call a sort of condescending tone. And they were talking about themselves, not the addict or the addict's family. So we had cause to believe that there was a gap in messaging, right? We could be the rehab center that basically keeps it real. So when we saw that very real, very simple line, "If you think you need rehab, you do," written in the review of a recovering addict, it struck us that that was the real tone that just might work. So start by assessing the space you're in, identify gaps, and doubt the default. Also, get better at simply listening. I mean, your job when you're review mining or doing any research for the purpose of writing great copy is not to interpret or summarize the speaker. Your job is just to listen. Just document what they say as they say it. Avoid summarizing as much as you can. I mean, summarizing is really best if you see recurring themes like, a good number of people are talking about how unreliable 12-step programs are. That's an insight that might help you later. If you find sticky language to support it, copy that verbatim with quotation marks. If you find your prospects' words and simply mirror them on the page, they're more likely to see themselves on the page and connect with you, the better life that they're looking for. So there's a worksheet for this lesson. Use it to categorize what you find when you go review mining.
We're looking at paribus.co. This is a service that helps you get back money when the products that you buy go on sale for less within a certain period of time after your purchase. So they're actually a really good example, kind of an easy example actually, just to clarify how to turn something that you offer into a promise. So again, a money back guarantee is something that you can very easily turn into a promise. Now, in this case, they're not doing a money back guarantee. You may have one though, right? And if you do, then that's a great way to reposition what you're offering as a product, as a promise, sorry. And I'm going to show you with this just how very obvious and easy it is to do this. But again, this is what a conversion copywriter like myself would do if we came across, if we were working for you and we saw that you had an opportunity to make a promise. Now, to be clear, promises are things that the Federal Trade Commission is very aware of. So always be sure to cover your butt. Now that means that we don't want anybody to get in trouble. Don't take this the wrong way. Like, don't make this, as soon as I say it, people are like, oh, forget it, I'm not going to do it. No, you can do it. You just have to be sure that you're actually going to follow through. And if you need to, be sure just to add mice type to the bottom of your page. Mice type is that little bit of legal where you could just down here at the bottom of this just clarify what your promise means. As long as you do it on the same page, you're usually totally covered, at least in America and Canada. So that's something that you should do, right? Just don't make it a click away. That's one of the things that most legal teams will tell you. Make sure that your any explaining copy that you have for a promise or claim that you're making happens within close proximity of the claim itself. Usually, I haven't seen it ever be that if you have a message at the top of the page, you can't put it at the bottom. So usually, yes, you can just put it at the bottom of the page, that mice type. Okay, that's a little background just before we dive right in and start, throwing around promises. But again, in this case, Paribus has a really good promise to make. They're just not positioning it as a promise. So all we would do, this is not going to blow your mind. It might blow your mind with how simple it is, but we're just going to say, we promise, oops, sorry, I have all caps on. We promise we are going to get it for you. So that's it, right? Stores owe you money. We promise we're going to get it for you. Now, in this case, although I don't like full stops on headlines, it does feel like it needs it. Stores owe you money. We promise we're going to get it for you. That's the core of a promise. Now, we could do other things to rephrase this entire headline so it's leading with the promise, more like we promise we're going to get back the money stores owe you, something like that. So let's try that. We're going to get back the money stores owe you. Then I'm just going to delete that. It's got a funky H somewhere. Okay, so we'll do that. Egads. Okay, you get the point. This edit tool isn't working for me there, but you would just simply delete this. I'm just going to delete it to that point so you can only see the period and you can get a sense for, okay, we promise we're going to get back the money stores owe you. That could be a very simple, easy promise for them to make. And then they would mice type that because people will wonder, well, how long does it take? And what if it's for things that I've already purchased that I wasn't signed up with Paribus for? So that's the kind of thing that you would want to put in mice type to support that promise. Or you don't even have to do mice type. If it's a really clear thing for you to message, you could just put it in a subhead directly below this. I'm not going to do that here because the formatting in this section is not going to allow me to, but you can absolutely go ahead and just put it in a subhead. And then you don't get that concern or worry that you're hiding anything or being, or just kind of being sketchy. I know that when it comes to mice type or fine print or legal or whatever it is that you want to call it, there is a bit of resistance, I think, from a lot of business owners because you immediately think, oh no, I don't want to look like we're hiding. And you're not. You're making a promise. It's a good promise and you're allowed to cover your butt. So do that in mice type or in your subhead.